I've seen a few videos by this guy that really hit the mark, but this one was really stinky.
Yo, guys, I know what I'm about to say might be seen as extremely controversial, but at what point are we going to start recognizing that people that are groomed are never actually groomed at all? These people are not victims.
So, Angry Asian decides to share his feelings about teenagers who are groomed, specifically older teenagers. And as somebody who experienced grooming as an older teenager, I just wanted to come and share some of my perspective. If you're new here, hi, my name is Kat Black, and I like to blog about all of the things that I personally embody and some of the experiences that I've had throughout my life that have been commonly misunderstood. And grooming is one of the subjects that I recently decided to speak about because it is something that has been a really hot topic of conversation, and a lot of people don't really understand how grooming actually works. And I felt like it was important for me to share my experiences so that maybe we can see this when it actually happens.
I am surrounded by these 16, 17, 18-year-old people. These guys are not fucking innocent, okay? They know exactly what is going on outside of the world, and they know how our society works. They're not some random, vulnerable child who doesn't know what 2 plus 2 is. They're basically fucking adults.
So I'm going to tell you how I met my groomer, because I was a precocious teenager who posted outlandish things on the internet. My old MySpace picture was literally like a topless photo of me being I was doing a lot. And I actually met the guy who would ultimately groom me on a dating app, specifically a dating app for transgender women. At that time in my life, I knew that I was transgender, but there weren't a lot of avenues for me to date as a transgender teenager. And a lot of my friends were doing these things, and I wanted to participate in the romantic, social, common things that people do when they're teenagers, and I couldn't, so I signed up for that website. And on my profile, I mentioned a few different ways that I was also looking for work. I was in a position where I was living in a home that wasn't very accepting, and I became very aware of the fact that I would have to figure out a way to survive, and I needed to leave my house as soon as possible if I was going to become the person I am today. Both of my parents worked in corporate America, and I was a good kid, right? So they never really monitored what was actually going on. And I was a good kid, but I was getting into stuff on the internet, and that's how I ultimately met the man who would groom me. Now, of course, if I'm on a dating app, I'm pretending that I'm 18, right? So, of course, a lot of the men who initially contacted me didn't know that I was not 18, right? But I told him pretty quickly what my situation was. I told him my age. I told him the position I was in, how I was looking for basically a job to make money to leave my house. And he invited me out to Los Angeles to be his art assistant. Now, he lived in a artist community in Los Angeles, and he was a pretty big sculpture artist in the time. He had a few statues here and there, a lot of corporate sort of things. And every weekend I would go to Los Angeles and I would spend time in his studio putting together some of his statues. And keep in mind, back then I was a kid who really wanted to go to art school. I went to school for animation. I went to CalArts for character animation. And at the time, that was what I was all about. I knew that I needed to get out, but I also knew that I wanted to get out and go to CalArts, right? And I wanted so desperately to be part of the LA art scene. I wanted so desperately to connect with other artists. And here he was, this older dude who had all of these connections in the Los Angeles art scene. And he would take me around to various events around the city, and I would be his assistant, and I'd be introduced to all of these people, and they would all meet me in my first chosen name, which was Kitty. If you can't tell, I have a cat thing. But anyway, so I was in a situation where I was able to explore my gender. I was able to be in a situation that felt accepting of me, and I was finally surrounded by artists. Meanwhile, at home, I had a father who was constantly breaking me down every single time I felt good about myself. Every little bit of femininity that I put together, he very clearly resented. And so it was almost impossible for me to exist in my parents' home as myself. And back then, I got really good at pretending to be the type of kid that they wanted me to be because I knew I wasn't going to survive in the home if I was myself. So it became really attractive for me to be out in Los Angeles with this dude as much as possible. So I actually worked in a studio for a couple of years. Now, if you can't piece it together, I was a little bit of an adultified child, right? I definitely had a little bit of that sense about myself that made me feel more developed than my peers. So, of course, when a man told me that I was mature for my age, it felt true. It felt like he was complimenting me and seeing me in a way that other people were not, right? My parents were not. He flattered me. He made me feel like my opinion mattered. He made me feel like I could actually be the person that I was. And so I gave him a degree of trust that I really didn't give most people at the time. So one night we're hanging out in another artist's studio, and this guy had some alcohol and they were making drinks. I remember it was a rum and coke, and they offer me one. Mind you, I was raised incredibly Christian, incredibly straight edge. But here I was in Los Angeles in an art studio, living the life and around these older men who were constantly telling me that I was very mature. So I said, all right, fuck it, I'll have my first drink. And I honestly don't really remember too much about what happened between when I had the drink and the morning. But I know that I had the drink and it wasn't soon thereafter that I don't remember the rest of my night and I blacked out. Anyway, I'm going to make another part to this video, so stay tuned for part 2.